Hi, friends. Good evening. It is what day are we now? Tuesday. And it is the 83rd day of the Russia's invasion into Ukraine. And still we're here. And as we talk about every day, one of the keys to what God is doing in the midst of Ukraine, surprisingly enough, is the church. God is moving through the church. And so many of you have given generously and we've passed it on to directly 100% of it to our partners, Vladimir and Lilia, in the city of Dnipro, and with the church Blagaya Vest at Good News. And we are just so grateful to every single one of you who's given. God is doing so much in the midst of so much pain and suffering. God is on the move. And so I wanted to give you a little bit of an update on what is happening there. And so what I'm going to do is I've got some slides here. I'm going to share up to the date of what's going on with them. And then a little later on, I'm going to do a little bit of Q&A on what's actually happening still in the war. So if you've got questions, you can throw those in, whether they're about the church Blagaya Vest or Vladimir Lilia, or about the church in general, or about Ukraine, about history, about Russia, about what's going on in the war. We'll handle anything you like. All right. So first off, like I said, from day one, you guys know, if you've been with us at all, the church Blagaya Vest is in the city of Dnipro, which is, as you see, right in the middle of the eastern portion of the country. And all the people fleeing from all the different portions have been coming into Dnipro. And at this point, it's a city of 1 million. There are over 220,000 refugees in the city. 220,000 people in need of a place to stay, in need of a place to, need of food, in need of clothing. One of the things they said that's happening is because everybody fled when it was cold. Now they have boots and heavy coats, but now it's beginning to get hot. They don't have clothes. And so they're having people coming in day after day, coming with needs. And so kind of give you a sense of what's happening in this area. Man, it looks like it's messed up my slides. But what's happening is this eastern portion, the pink portion, is the portion that Russia has invaded and taken. And what's happening is, and the little hashed areas are the parts that they are attempting to take right now. And people are fleeing to this middle dot. It's whited out my names right there in the middle, which is Dnipro. They're fleeing there from all throughout that region. And the church Blagaya Vest and our friends there are helping people. They're helping refugees get out. They're helping those 220,000 refugees. They're feeding them. They're providing them a place to stay, helping them go further to the west. They're helping them with bedding. They had somebody walk up and they said, listen, all I need is a blanket. I don't have anything. Another person walked up and said, I ran away I escaped with boots. And I just need like shorts and a t-shirt. Other people, they're starving, right? They left with nothing. And here we are on the 82nd day, and they're able to provide them with food because of the gifts you have given. Just today, they were loading up the very last of all the medicine that they have gotten. One of the things they do almost daily is they give everything away. The need is so great. Just believing God does provide more, and whether through your gifts or through means of other groups in Western Ukraine sending food or sending supplies, but literally they gave the absolute last of all their medical supplies today, and they were told by the military they were going to those soldiers that they evacuated out of Mariupol, those 53 wounded soldiers. Praise God. Over and over again, the local areas are turning toward them to meet the needs. that are there. They're turning to them and asking them, will you help? Can you help? And so, for instance, tomorrow they're going to drive straight into Kramatorsk, which is about as far east as you can go, in surrounded by Russian invasion on every side. And that's where the rockets hit the train station. Their sons are actually driving buses into there with packed full of supplies, because literally there are no stores, there are no pharmacies left in that area at all. They've been going into occupied territories like Melitopol. They're continuing on. One of the things that's been amazing, because they've served with such excellence, because they've held nothing back. They've served with radical generosity. Their name has become great. They're not a great church in terms of size, but their name has become so great in the city that on Monday, that people come from all over. They line up for hours to receive the care, because it's both quality and quantity, and they're cared for with dignity and with love. And so they're giving away so radically that on Monday they're giving, when they open it, one of the things, they're going to actually have a service. They're going to preach the gospel, but also in the midst of it, their television cameras are coming, because they're watching it. This is what the church should be known for, right? We should be demonstrating a different kingdom. The rest of the world flees, we run to the battle. The rest of the world's afraid, we're full of hope. The rest of the world is hoarding, and we are giving away with generosity. And Vladimir Lilia they're amazing. But pray for them, because they're tired. They're tired on a physical level, right? Of the amount of work they're doing. Their team is tired. There's 60 of them on their team, but of volunteers. But at the same time, they're also tired from the pain that they see. The pain they see. One of the things they were sharing with us is, just today they received a call. One of the men in their church had been a soldier in 2014, had been captured by the Russians, taken to a camp that nobody survived from. Literally, it was horrible. They killed everybody. He cried out to the Lord. Their church prayed. They fasted and prayed and cried out to God for him. He was the only person to survive that death camp, and he came home. Well, they just got news that he has been deeply wounded. I think he has a hole in his heart. He's got all kinds of things wrong with him. Please pray for him. His name escapes me, but he even as he's lying in the hospital and potentially dying, he grabbed a phone and he called them. He said, "Can you please care for my wife and my kids?" They have 5 kids, 5 kids that managed to get married after 2014, and since then 5 kids, one after another. And they were able to, Vladimir quickly grabbed as much supplies as they could, drove out. She's out in the middle of nowhere with no supplies, no way to get supplies. They're able to care for her. And they have a whole group of widows, actually, of soldiers with small children that they're actually caring for. They're taking in. One woman came and she's like, "I don't want to leave. This is my home now." And they're able to care for them, give them housing, give them places to stay. Another thing that they've really risen up to, and I actually gave a word to Vladimir Lilia a while back. I said, "You all are bishops. God's raising you up as bishops." And I don't mean that in terms of government and control or hierarchy, but because a bishop is a pastor of pastors, that God's giving you a heart to care for pastors. Well, guess what? So many of these pastors in the eastern part of the country, either large portions of their congregation have left, or many of the needs haven't left, but many of their congregation have fled, but also the money has fled. I mean, 9 out of 10 people in Ukraine will be in poverty this year as a result. 40 to 50% of the economy is gone. The reality is they're serving generously, giving the clothes off their back, and yet they've got to eat. And so Vladimir Lilia have taken upon themselves to begin to adopt many of these pastors that they know, to provide for their families, provide for them so they can continue to radically serve. They're bravely serving in the middle of the bombings, in the middle of all that's going on. They're doing this because and they're able to support them financially because of the gifts you've given. Guys, I'm just blown away. The the grace and favor, but the courage and the generosity that they continue to show, to continue to pour out over and over and over again, and the wisdom to know where to go and when to go and what to do. Again, whether it's supplying food or clothing or means of transport to get people out, getting supplies in, food, medicines, whatever it is. So emotional support. So many, we talked about this, so many who are fleeing after seeing such atrocities, they'll for about 10 days, they'll be okay. And then it's just, they can't handle it anymore and they lose it. So they're beginning to minister to people emotionally, psychologically, spiritually, every way possible. And so they can do this. They can be radical. They can be generous because y'all have been generous. And so, as I've mentioned before, we've sent over $122,000 so far into to the church Blagaya Vest. Good news in the middle of all of this, and we're going to send some more tomorrow. I'm not sure. I believe we've managed to raise $5,000 in the last week. I'll have to hear from our accountant. But if you would like to be a part of that, if you would like to give, there is an opportunity to give. Go ahead to ariselife.org/help-Ukraine, and 100% of those funds go directly to Good News Church. We're paying all the wire fees so that 100% of your monies go. But we're seeing God move in a real way because of your generosity. Wow. And so if you've got questions about what they're doing or what they're experiencing or how they're doing, if you've got questions about the war in Ukraine, we love to answer them. We're really big. There's no questions that are off limits. I do ask that you ask with a good heart, but just we are more than willing to answer any and all questions you've got. And so just consider. Muhammad said, sorry, I've not been joining. Hey, listen, we're confident. Listen, even our friends don't jump on all the time. Some of them hardly at all. It doesn't make us not our friends. As God is leading you and empowering you to care and to pray for Ukraine, embrace it. Don't let shame keep you from doing it when you can. I'm loving seeing, though, how many of you are joining from all over. Oh, gosh, I'm seeing, let's see, what have I got? I got Debbie in Somerville, South Carolina. I've got Camila in Norway, Shirley from the U.S., Agnes from Toronto, Avis from Anderson, South Carolina, John David from Lake Charles, Louisiana, Danny from Madison, Alabama, Crystal from South Africa. Oh, let's see. Patricia is coming from the Solomon Islands. Oh, Floor from Bloomfield, New Jersey. Elizabeth from, I guess, Hawaii. Wow. Come on. And then we've got Helen from NI. I'm not sure NI. You'll have to help me on that one. Elizabeth's from Finland. There we go. Come on. All right. So, let's see. I'm trying to keep up. You guys are rolling on me. Awesome. Yes. Will they ask? Okay. Jean was asking, when the war started, we had a lot of collections for clothes, blankets, etc. People here in Northern Ireland gave willingly in plenty. Will they ask for lighter clothes? Yes, 100%. Because they fled with the clothes on their back. They didn't plan. Nobody planned to be on the road for 80 days, let alone longer. So that's a great question, Jean. Again, one of the things we're seeing with refugees is that people are growing tired. I mean, listen, what do they say? House guests are like fish. They begin to stink after 3 days. And that's just normal, let alone strangers who've come to live in your home. And they're finding that in the UK, they're starting to see homelessness as people are kicking them out of their homes. And it may be for good reasons. I mean, they didn't know these people. I don't know. But anyway, so please pray for that. Jane's coming from South Africa, Johannesburg. Brenda from Mobile. Vanessa from South Africa. Come on. Oh, come on. If you've got questions, would love to hear them. Suzette from the Florida Keys. All right. Come on. Brendan from Ireland. Gwen from Colorado. Mira from South Carolina. Lynn from Australia. Sheila from Canada. Paula from Brisbane. Awesome. Come on, Christine. Come on, praying. I love it. Michelle asked, are the wounded soldiers that were evacuated from Mariupol in Russia or Ukraine, are they safe? Really good question, Michelle. So, and another question that was asked earlier today is, does this mean that somehow Ukraine has surrendered, somehow the war is over, or whatever? So here's what happened in Mariupol. Russia has been spending a lot of effort in trying to drive misinformation around what has happened in Mariupol. They've tried to make it that the Ukrainian government has abandoned the soldiers in Azovstal and in Mariupol. That's simply not the case. Here's the reality. Is it looks like a narrow band of land there. Let's see here. Boom. Let's see. It looks like a very narrow band of land, but it's not. It's that little line of pink between Mariupol and the white is 125 miles, 160 kilometers wide, or 180 kilometers. And so that's a long ways. That you can't. I think we're going to find out. Some of the things I saw was they were getting some supplies in, but it's like a Navy SEAL team or a Spetsnaz or a Special Forces team flying in and then coming in through the ocean or whatever, trying to get these supplies in. They could not evacuate thousands of people 125 miles through enemy lines. We're hearing miraculous stories of one by one people getting out. But listen, this was not going to happen, not with the way that they were bombing and everything else. Their safest place was to stay in Azovstal, in all those catacombs under there. And so, but Russia was pushing this narrative that the Ukrainian government had abandoned them. They were using the wives of the soldiers to run a narrative that Zelensky didn't care, that all he wanted was martyrs. That's not the case. But there's two things going on. So one was Russia held the control. Russia is the only one who could let them in or out. Ukraine had zero ability either way. Second thing is that I will say they strategically were performing a life-saving mission for hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of Ukrainians, because the north of Mariupol, that front, the Zaporozhye front, was key. Russia was going to do a massive push up to Zaporozhye, a city of 700,000, and really going for Dnipro, where our friends are, a city of 1 million people. They're going to push all the way up there and try to push all the way to Kyiv. This was their goal. But because they couldn't take Mariupol, it tied up their forces so much that the Zaporozhye front, which was the weakest of all the fronts, it was the most disorganized militarily, was able to hold because Russia never committed their full troops. And so they brought a great value, even as the Ukrainians were not able to get them. Well, they finally were able to come up with a plan for the Russians, because the Russians, it's egg on their face that they haven't been able to take Azovstal, that Azovstal, after 82 days, still holding out. They finally said, fine, here's what's going to happen. They were taken out, but they were taken into Russian-held territory with the agreement that those soldiers, in turn, with 53 of them, went to a special hospital, 211 were sent to another place, with the idea that they would then be turned over to the Ukrainian in exchange for Russian prisoners of war. Now, this is where your prayers are really, really important, because immediately the Speaker of the Duma, the head from the United Russia Party, Putin's party, declared, we must never trade our soul, for give in to the Nazis and da da da. Well, that's the problem. That's the problem. That right there is that they would try to renege on the deal. And they just use this as a trick to finally take Azovstal. Apparently, Azovstal still has soldiers in it. So continue to pray for the whole situation in Mariupol. Pray those soldiers get out. Pray that that all the soldiers get out, all the civilians get out, and that they be saved. So why? So it's not that they haven't been giving up. They've wanted to, but they knew that if they gave up, they would just be slaughtered. And so it had to be some sort of deal like this. Pray that deal holds. So good questions. All right. Keep the questions coming. All right. Hello, Kelly from Spokane. Oh, North Cobb High School. Cool. Could you repeat something you said about when truth comes out, the devil works harder? Not sure if I said this right. Well, I will say this. The enemy is afraid of the truth. The enemy is afraid of the truth. And when the truth comes out, it's so obvious, the truth versus the lie, that oftentimes the enemy has to kick it into high gear to try to get us to give up on the truth, to back away. He's threatened. And so when truth comes to life, a lot of times he makes a last-ditch effort to fight it. I mean, that's just practically. I'm not speaking biblically or anything. It's just something I've seen. So I think that's what I'm speaking to, what you said there. Vanessa saying, glad to hear about the good news. Thankful for informing us daily. Glad to, Vanessa. Thank you. Gwen said, how much Ukrainian is wheat grown? Is Russia trying to control the food? Yes. So 11% of all wheat in the world comes from Russia. 7% comes from Ukraine. Vast amounts of it come from that whole southern swath that kind of goes from Mariupol over. That's the huge wheat growing area, long dry summers to dry out the wheat. And so already Russia has stolen 1.5 million tons of wheat from the occupied territories. They want to get to Odessa, where there's millions of tons waiting to be shipped to Africa, Egypt, and so on and so forth. But they can't thus far, praise God. And so the whole thing with wheat is, yes, they are attempting to use wheat as a means to hold the world hostage, to get especially the unaligned countries, to, such as on the Security Council, which is Mexico, Brazil, UAE, India, along with China, and to stand to say no, to use this as leverage on the whole world, to hold the world hostage, to use it as a negotiating point. So by blocking the Black Sea, though, all those millions of tons can't get out of Odessa. By stealing all the wheat, they're able to make off with it regardless. And yes, they are definitely attempting to do that. So that what it comes down to is, I think I figured out but it's not just wheat, it's corn as well. Between Russia and so 3% of the world's calories come from Russian and Ukrainian wheat. I think 1% of them come from Russian and Ukrainian corn, and that as well. So 4% of the world's calories are being blocked through this, and particularly in the poorest parts of the world, that's huge. That is the difference between life and death. So please pray about that. All right. Come on, Christine. Yeah. Abe, praying from the Philippines. Come on. Gwen, will some parts of Ukraine be able to plant as usual? Yes. In fact, they're trying by any means possible. It's been sad. I've seen tractors in the field on fire where they've been hit by rockets. Yes. Yeah. I mean, the farmers are going to keep doing what they do. I mean, they have no other choice. And so they're trying to do that, trying to sow. They've got to. It's like I said, it's difference of life and death for the country, let alone for them. Let's see. All right, Myra, Michelle, praying for the soldiers. Stephanie, hello. Sally, hello. Ellen from Tucson, welcome. Yes, and Rebecca is praying for the end of this senseless war. We as well. Tabitha is saying, what the devil meant for evil, God meant it for good. He'll turn around. Yes. Ben White saying, pray the war stops. Yes. I got a few more things to share with you, but if you got any questions about the war, about what's happening, this is your chance. We really want to honor your time. But again, we're just blown away by the opportunity. Vladimir Lilia have been planning for this moment for 8 years. They didn't know that. They've been ministering on the front lines, ministering to the troops, ministering to the refugees since 2014, to the point that they actually all but lost their church in the process, because many of their whole elders said, we did not sign up for this, and they left. And so, but the Lord provided more people who continued to serve and to embrace the call of God that he had placed in them. And as a result, they have had such favor and such wisdom of knowing how to navigate this period, and such courage. They had already fought the battle of fear back in 2014. So they're walking forward with joy and hope. And so I mean, it's really such a privilege to partner with them. We're just so grateful for their courage. And come on. Brenda's asking, what about Snake Island? Okay, so Snake Island, if you go straight from the west of the western tip of Crimea, about halfway across to the other side, the Snake Island is right there. And whoops. And so what happens with that is that island, as many of you know, I'm just going to give the whole background because I think you're asking something more specific. The whole background is it's a little tiny rock, but that rock acts as kind of the guardian of that entire northwestern portion of the Black Sea. And so if Russia's fleet is vulnerable. After the Moskva went down, it took out all their anti-aircraft, anti-missile capability for the whole Black Sea fleet as a large case thing, as a network that they had set up. And so they had individual things like, and then you had Admiral Makarov went down, or at least got caught on fire. That took out the next layer. And then they bombed the living tar out of the facility on Snake Island. Well, Russia's been trying to reestablish control of Snake Island ever since. Every time they get on there, they get blasted out of existence. We're still in that place. Russia is they're willing to sacrifice untold numbers of lives if just to get that rock, because without it, they cannot operate safely in the northwest portion of the Black Sea. And potentially the port of Odessa could be reopened potentially. And they lose their ships. They've lost most of the Raptor class patrol boats as a result of what's happened at Snake Island. I think they've lost 3 so far. They lost a large scale logistics ship. The Admiral Makarov, and then also the Moskva. And so they really can't. But more than that, if they can get that control, then if you look at Odessa to the southwest, there's a big chunk of land as part of Ukraine, but it's only connected by a single bridge that they've been bombing the daylights out of. Now that bridge is still there, but it's not functional. And that's the means that they keep of supplying and supporting that portion. And if they can get a radar set up on Snake Island, then they can go ahead and begin to move towards an amphibious assault on the southwest portion of Ukraine, take that and then work their way up to rejoin to Transnistria and possibly take Moldova, and then make a sandwich by taking out Odessa and Mykolaiv together. So that's really, the Snake Island is key, but so far it's holding out. Continue to pray for that. And Francis wanted to know any news on Putin's health and his inner circle. So Putin, somebody asked, how do we, is the cancer, is that fake news? What is that? I will tell you this. We do not know. We do have from multiple sources. I will tell you 3 very relatively reliable sources. One is a Telegram channel called General SVR, part of the military version of the FSB or KGB. And he's the one who's really said he's dying of cancer. Everybody's planning for his death. Another oligarch was overheard saying he has blood cancer. Also, we do know that over the last year, he's had over 12 appointments with oncologists. It seems a little more than your regular checkups. And on top of that, he's been very puffy. He's had bruises show up. And on Victory Day, he had a blanket around him, like somebody who's really struggling against. It wasn't that cold. But also Russian men need to show themselves strong, and he's always tempted to show himself strong. So that seems to indicate he is not doing well. We really haven't seen him in the last bit. We also haven't seen Gerasimov. Another thing that's happening, it sounds like he and Gerasimov are sitting in easy chairs together, and they're actually doing all the attacks. They're literally down to the level of colonel or battalion level. They're moving people around like nobody's able to make decisions without them. But he does not seem to be doing well. That's also what makes me think is driving his want to make this war happen. He doesn't have a future. And so, So I don't think his health is very well, but we don't have immediate updates on that. But please pray. And his inner circle, the reality is, we have seen Shoigu, the defense minister, a couple times, but honestly, don't know how he's doing. Most of the oligarchs are MIA. There's the real part with his inner circle is Kadyrov, which is the Chechen warlord, and Girkin, who is the Donetsk Minister of Defense, aka warlord. Those two guys are vocal. They're incredibly vocal on Telegram. They're also incredibly vocal about undercutting what's going on in the military and how bad it is and what they're doing, and telling them they should take all of Ukraine and they should do mass conscription. And so there's a lot of different voices. One neat one, I think I can post it. I think I'll try to figure out a way to post it. It's really fascinating. This literally happened in the last 12 hours on the Первый Канal, the first channel, the main Russian state news. They had a former colonel on there basically saying, don't believe the news. It's all false. We're doing really poorly. Ukrainian morale is not low. It's super high. We've got to face the facts. We're completely isolated. Everybody's against us. And, the reality is, I believe in telling the truth, because at least then you can resolve the issues. If you keep denying the truth, eventually it's going to kick you in the face. For them to say this on Russian TV, that's insane. The lady, who was the kind of, they had a roundtable lady who was running it, kept trying to interrupt and throw a broom in his spokes, but nothing would stop him. He was on a roll. And so there's a lot of signs. There's cracks. Oh, well, and that's what he said is they've got to do whatever they can to break away from the isolation, whatever it takes. And part of that isolation is default. And so as they head to possible, again, another default on May 27th, they, it's getting real. It's getting real. All right. What would it take to get back Crimea? To be perfectly honest, ask the British in the Crimean War. You don't want to do an all-out military campaign in Crimea. It would take a negotiated peace. It would take Russia being absolutely crushed in the field. And we said that before. That's got to happen regardless for Russia to wake up and smell the coffee. Russia needs to be defeated in the field. And by that, I mean in the Kherson Oblast region, around Mariupol, Donbass, Lugansk, Izium. They just need to be crushed. And you would think they've been crushed so far. No, the army needs to be destroyed. Think Waterloo. That's what really needs to happen. We need to see a Waterloo. Suleiman saying, please, why didn't the Ukraine military were not able to attack the Russian military surrounded the steel plant in Mariupol? I expect the Ukraine armed forces will launch an attack on the invaders. That's a great question, Suleiman. Here's the reality of it. They were 125 miles of controlled territory from Azovstal. So for them to do that, so if you're going to do an invasion, you have to not just, if you're going to get people out, you have to drive a wedge that's a minimum of a 45-degree angle, right? Think a triangle through occupied territory. So because you've got to protect your rear so that it doesn't collapse on you, which means they would have to press a front 200 miles on either side of Mariupol all the way to the sea. You see what you see? They would have to be able to hold the front 200 miles on either side of Mariupol to make a triangle that touched Mariupol to get the people out. And the amount of it's just not realistic. They have, especially because the Zaporozhye front that's coming from that is the weakest of all. For them to evacuate hundreds, if not thousands, of civilians, let alone thousands of Ukrainian soldiers, it literally everybody would have died. Everybody would have died. The loss of life for the Ukrainians would have been immense. The loss of tactical advantage would be catastrophic. And more than likely, they would end up losing all of Eastern Ukraine if they had attempted it. It's a really good question, Suleiman. It's one that Russia has really attempted in a lot of other channels to promote, that Ukrainian government has abandoned the Azovstal fighters and was wanting to turn them into martyrs. And it's simply not true. Gene said, this is not a normal question, but I wonder, did anyone in America see the winning band from Ukraine at the Eurovision contest? Well deserved. Yeah, I did not. But I saw a little bit of them beforehand. But Mary Miracle saying, I kept telling President Zelensky to go after Russia's homeland. That would have stopped Putin. I will say this, Mary, I'm a little bit at different odds with that. So if Zelensky invades Russia, it actually will empower Putin, because Russians are willing to die. That's a reason why traditionally Russia wins war, not with strategy, not with ability, not with weaponry, but sheer mass casualties. They throw bodies at you. In Stalingrad, they would send 20 troops out with one gun. When one guy got shot, he grabbed the gun and fired until he was shot. This is how Russia has traditionally won wars for the last 300 years. But Russians will not die for no reason. They need to die for a good cause. If you make it an invasion of Russia, that's when everything changes. Everything changes, and the Russian people sign up. They have high morale. Right now, the biggest problem, they had low morale. They have high morale. They come out and listen. Russian people will defend Russia the same way Ukrainian people will. They share that common bond. But also with that, it potentially turns the entire international community against Ukraine. Ukraine has the moral high ground in defending themselves up to this point. If Russia at any point can in some way flip it around that Ukraine is in some way the aggressor, we're in trouble. And so honestly, a lot of what's happened in Belgrade, I really believe is false flag or out of control Ukrainian troops. I don't think everything that Ukraine has done up to this point, unless it's to hit military targets, but shelling villages, that's an absolute waste of their limited resources. Doesn't make sense to me anyway. Awesome. Francis, thank you. I'm praying. Mary Miracle, this war would not have happened with President Trump. I actually believe that, but not because he stood up to Putin. He actually failed to stand up to Putin on multiple accounts. He didn't stand up about Crimea, didn't stand up about Donbass, and he didn't stand up about the Nordost pipeline. But the one thing is, Trump was a loose cannon in the way that Putin was, that he'd be willing to do anything. And I think Putin just couldn't count on him. Putin's plays chess. He plays, and so he couldn't tell what Trump would have done. And so I agree with you on that, Mary. Awesome. Suleiman, does that mean Mariupol is now totally lost to the Russians? Yes, except for this. It is a complete hole in the ground. They destroyed 95% of the city. There's nothing left for them to control. What this means is, if anything, strategically, Mariupol was a point for, none of the Ukrainian fighters could do anything except protect the people who are in Azovstal. They were not able to protect the 100,000 people who were suffering under the Russians. What they were able to do was keep all the Russian troops busy and therefore protect. They were actually protecting Zaporozhye. They were protecting Dnipro and the heartland of Ukraine by keeping the Russians busy. What has happened though is what it does mean is now that they're gone, Russia can focus on occupying, which means shipping people to filtration camps, deporting them to Russia, killing anybody that they believe has any association with the Ukrainian military. It means that they can begin to commit atrocities. It means that they can attempt to consolidate control and make a farce where they've been talking about making Mariupol a part of Russia, making Kherson officially a part of Russia. So yes, it does mean that. All right, Randall's saying, can see the miracle of God's hand in slowing down the Russians. Come on, praying the madness will stop. Yes. Carol's saying, will Ukraine take back Mariupol? Pray they return the soldiers from the steel factory. Good question. I don't know. I will say this. That is absolutely Ukraine's goal. Ukraine's goal is to take back every bit of that pink area you see on the map, every bit. That's their goal. Why? Because every area that Russia occupies, people are suffering. Every area they controlled in Donbass for the last 8 years, all they've done is strip it of resources, and they have not sent food. They have not sent anything. They literally, every Christian pastor in there is either dead or fled. Even when Orthodox priests speak up against oppression, they're shut down and shipped out. Any area that Russia controls is under oppression and domination, control, and atrocities. And so their goal is to take it all back. And that includes Crimea. Totally agree. Defend, but don't attack. Yes, Francis. Reese saying, what's going on with the Russian church? A very good question. even within the Russian Orthodox Church, with Patriarch Tikhon, and I mean no disrespect, but it is a well-known fact that during the Soviet Union, he was a KGB agent. And I mean, the archives are, you can see that. You can even see it on his Wikipedia page. Throughout, he has never denied it. He's never stepped back from it. He's never renounced it. And in fact, one of our good friends was about 3 ranks below him in the Orthodox Church, and was sharing with me about there is actually a branch of the FSB in the Russian Orthodox Church. And so but that doesn't mean that the whole Orthodox Church is corrupt. There are many priests who have spoken out against Tikhon, spoken out against the war. They have faced massive amounts of oppression as a result. I mean, good grief. The Russians bombed the Svyatogorsk Lavra, which is a 500-year-old holy site. But as far as the Protestant church, at the beginning of the war, right before they put the 15-year ban on a 15-year sentence for speaking out against the war, 81 Baptist pastors wrote an open letter and put their names to paper. And that's really important because, listen, they knew the 15-year thing was coming. And if you know something about Russia, they have no problem with post-dating a sentence. In other words, making a law and then charging you for it as a crime, even though you did it before the law. That's not a problem at all. So they were very brave to do that. But the vast majority of the Protestant church and the Orthodox Church within Russia have all said, yeah, this is right. Yay, support the government. And actually, it's very, very sad. Many of them actually, Vladimir lost so many friends. Many of our other pastors have lost friends. They've been told that how can you fight back? Listen, you're causing suffering by fighting back. You just need to submit. This is all happening to you because of your sins. You need to repent. I mean, crazy talk. And what's happened is, as the war's dragged on, as information's come out, and you could say, how could they say this? Well, they're drinking from the same TV everybody else is. And for the last 8 years in Russia, as the misinformation has gone on, as this has gone on, they've started to go, wait a minute, perhaps, again, truth is the friend of light. Light, when the light comes, the truth drives it out. And so with that, when the light comes, it drives out the darkness. And so they're starting to go, wait a minute, could it be true? And they're starting to reach out. Pray for them. They don't know what to do, because generally speaking out just gets you a sentence and doesn't give you a voice. And so they need to have wisdom of how to shepherd, as pastors, how to shepherd their flocks in the middle of this, because you can't imagine the mental anguish when you start to realize that your country is perpetrating these kind of atrocities. Just imagine your own country, wherever you are, perpetrating these kind of atrocities. And it's really hard for them to wrap their minds and hearts around. Most countries have some form of patriotism, and it gets really tangled with God. And in the process, we can agree to things that are absolutely not God. And it really messes with people's hearts and minds. And so pray for them to recognize, and pray for the Russian people as a whole to recognize what's going on. I watched interviews on the street recently, and it was very fascinating. Most of the young people really recognize what's going on. The older generation that drinks from the TV, not so much. Awesome. Okay. All right. What has changed in Belarus as far as getting involved in the war? Okay, so Lukashenko, the president or strongman dictator of Belarus, he is walking a fine wire. He almost lost Belarus in 2020 and 2021 in the all the protests. So he has very little support. Like, he had to actually bring in Russian troops to control his own people. So he has very limited control, and he is very afraid that, so for him to send troops into Ukraine does two things. One is potentially it causes the people to rise back up because of moral outrage. Two, potentially cause the military to turn against him. And three, what it can do is when the military's gone, the people don't have any problem. They're not afraid. They rise up. So you can see why he has zero desire. But also, he's getting all the pain too, right? They've closed the borders between Poland and Belarus. They're sanctioning them. They're keeping. So he's also really hurting. But he reached out to Europe, was like, hey, man, I never wanted to be a part of this. And they're like, yeah, right? We know what you did in 2020. We know what you did in 2021. You hosted him to do this attack. Don't give us that. And so then he turned back around, and even this last 2 days ago, they had a meeting of all the heads of like Azerbaijan, Armenia, Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, and Belarus and Russia, and basically agreeing. And he led the charge and say, we must stand with Russia. So they've got a whole bunch of troops on the northwest border of Belarus, and most of them seem to be right by Belarus. I'm sorry, northwest corner of Ukraine on the line there by Poland. And so what he's trying to do, I believe, I don't think he's going to invade. I think it's just too scary for him. What he's trying to do is threaten invasion so that it keeps Ukrainian troops up there so they can't commit to the southeast and thereby take out the Russians. And so that's his part. He's not willing to commit to his troops to invade, but he'll commit them to keep the Ukrainians busy. All right, just a few more questions because we all got places to be. All right, what has changed? All right. Need Russian revolution and life confounds. Come on. Yes. And so the final thing I want to say is, again, we are not praying for destruction. We're praying for bloodless resolutions. We're praying for creative solutions. We're praying for a Daniel to arise in the midst of government for the fundamental Soviet system to be destroyed, but the structures that are in place to be redeemed, right? So that all of society is not in free fall in Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine, but rather that righteousness may flourish, that freedom would come forth, and in the process, all the people, the gospel will go forth, and that the people would be free. So that's what we're praying for. Again, though, as we said at the beginning, if you would like to help with what God is doing, the need is only increasing, but often the interest decreases. The need, people have run out of so many of their resources. Even if they fled with something. It's all gone. Many Ukrainians are actually fleeing back to Ukraine because they've run out of resource wherever they are, or they've run out of a place to stay. And so many are coming back because they realize that Russia has been kicked out of wherever they were, whether Chernihiv or Sumy or Kharkov or Kyiv. And so the people are coming back, but they're in need. As I mentioned before, the 220,000 refugees in the city of Dnipro alone, a city of 1 million. And our friends Lilia and Vladimir are keys to helping those people, but also they're actually getting supplies to the front as well. And so if you would like to help us in standing with them, 100% of those funds go directly to our friends there and all that they're doing. Again, we'll cover all the transaction fees. Just go to ariselife.org/help Ukraine. You'll see a green box. Click there. And as I said, if we see it coming in, we're sending out monies tomorrow around noon. And so if we see it, we will make sure it gets straight through. So love you guys. So grateful for you all. Thank you for your questions. Continue to like, share, comment, and be blessed. And we'll see you tomorrow with the latest on what God's doing in the middle of Ukraine. Have a great day.